Hey guys, Victor here, coming at you with another deck profile, and for today's video we're going to be doing an updated Tearlament list. Now this is going to be post the September 2025 Forbidden and Limited list, which means that we are going to finally have access to cards such as Glow Bulb, which, very cool card. It's one of my favorite tuners of all time, just being able to bring itself back from the graveyard by milling a card, and it just pretty much fits seamlessly into the deck. Not to mention, we are playing a couple synchro monsters, and by a couple, I just mean one, so that we can pretty much get like full value out of the bulb itself. So, with that out of the way, let's jump right into it. As always, we're going to be starting off with the monster lineup first, and the first card is of course going to be Tearlaments Reinoheart, who in a pure Tearlament deck is pretty much always the go-to starter, right? Whether it's normal or special summoned, it's able to send any of your Tearlament monsters except itself from the deck to the graveyard. So if you want a fusion summon, you send any of your limited guys, or if you want to just mill cards, you send Tearlaments Kashtira. But point is, he just gets your entire engine rolling. Then to accompany our 3 Tearlaments Reinoheart, we're playing 3 Tearlaments Kashtira, who, on normal or special summon, is able to mill 3 cards, either from your deck or your opponent's deck, but it's pretty much always just going to be your deck for the most part. And then when it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, it's able to mill 2 more cards for a potential 5-card mill just on one turn, which, this is a Tearlament deck, so ideally you want to mill as many cards as possible, right? Then for the 1-of tiers, we're playing the 1-of Scheiren, the 1-of Havnis, and the 1-of Merrli. They're all limited, so we can only play one of each, unfortunately, but they're still incredibly impactful whenever they're able to actually activate and resolve, right? As these are the ones that pretty much just open up the entirety of your extra deck, since they're the ones that enable you to be able to fusion summon your fusion monsters. And then not to mention, they all also are capable of milling 3, depending on if you meet the right requirements, right? So yeah, with that, that's the tier portion. And then for the rest of the deck, when it comes to the monster lineup, we are going to be playing 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. We still got to play this just because we do not want to auto lose to like a Fulos, or basically just Fulos. Perulia hurts to an extent as well, just because they can chain into cards like our Tier Cash and our Scheiren, right? But Fulos is the big one because we pretty much go through like half our extra deck on the first turn, and we are going to be special summoning a lot of monsters from the deck because we are going to be playing Destiny Hero Malicious. That's right, we're going back to Destiny Hero Malicious for this one, mainly because I feel like I need a little bit more testing with the Fiendsmith stuff, because we did lose Moon, which is actually a pretty big hit, I'm not gonna lie. But I decided, let's just go back to old reliable. We basically only need this card to be able to go into Pilgrim Reaper to mill 5 cards anyways. And because it's just already like a dark type, that just means it lets you synergize with the Tearlament portion a little bit more easily, as well as just provide you with ample fodder to be able to go into your link summons, right? So 3 malicious, pretty solid, especially if like you're struggling to incorporate the Fiendsmith portion of the list currently. Like I'm sure we'll figure it out eventually, but for now, malicious is more than good enough. That's it for the 3-ofs. We don't play any 2-of monsters, and then for the 1-ofs, we play 1 Kashtira Fenrir, which admittedly should probably be at 2, but I want it to be a little bit more flexible, so we're playing 1 Fenrir and then 1 Pressured Planet, which we'll get to when we get to the spells and traps. But, Fenrir is just like a phenomenal card, right? You special summon it, it's a free body, it's able to search out your Tearlaments Kashtiras, and if your opponent decides to activate a monster effect, on res, you're able to banish one of their face-up cards on their side of the field. So, yeah, just the amount of pressure that Fenrir puts is pretty solid. Then for the other 1-ofs, we're going to be playing 1 Mudora, but we're also going to be playing 1 Keldo the Sacred Protector. So with the way that the current format is shaped up, the graveyard is a pretty important resource. I mean, it's always been a pretty important resource, but it's definitely been more impactful as of late, as Yummy, Canine, and even Dracotail, to an extent, have some kind of effect that revolves around the graveyard, right? In the case of Dracotail, their fusions come back. In the case of Canine, you can stop cards like their Lupus. And when it comes to Yummy, you're able to stop cards like their Field Spell, or like, I think it's their Synchro monster that's also able to like reborn from the graveyard. But point is, every single one of the top decks currently has something that the shufflers can disrupt. So yeah, just being able to include both of them gives us just a little bit more control for those types of matchups. And then obviously they're just great for helping you recycle your own resources as well. We're playing 1 Helshaddoll Hollow to be able to mill more cards, because it allows us to mill for every different attribute we currently control. And then it also gives us access to Helshaddoll Winda, which is in its own right a very powerful card. We are of course going to be playing the recently released Glow Bulb, as like I said earlier in the introduction, it's just another body that we can potentially synchro summon with, but it's basically just like there to do something, right? Whether it's milling, linking, synchro summoning, whatever. Glow Bulb, really fun card to use. And then lastly, we're playing the 1 Beastking of the Swamps, just to be able to access cards like Rukulos, because I enjoy playing Rucolos, simple as that. So with that, that's the monster lineup, and now we can finally move on to the spell and trap portion. Now that we're on the spell and trap portion of the video, we're of course going to be starting it off with Primeval planet Perlereino, who is, it's an easy 3-up, let's be real. If you activate it, you get to search your deck for any of your Tearlaments monsters, so you just add whatever one fits the situation the best, right? You just want to mill pure cards, but you don't have a discard, you add Merrli. If you just need to start like establishing something with Scream, you can add a Reinoheart. If you already have everything set up and you added this later in the game, maybe get prepared for like your next turn, so you add like a Tearlaments Kashtira. But point is, it gets whatever card you may ever need for whatever situation. And then, in addition to that, it boosts all your tiers and your fusions by 500 attack to get them extra beefy, to allow you to go for game a little bit more easily, as well as just make it a little bit more difficult for your opponent to break your board. And then, whenever a tier monster gets shuffled back into the deck, whether it's by their own effective fusion summon, or if you hit them with like a shuffler or something, you're able to destroy one card on the field. So yeah, 3-planet, no-brainer in pure tier. Then to accompany our 3 planets, we're playing 3 Tearlaments Scream, who, whenever you control a face-up Tearlament monster, and if you or your opponent decides to normal or special summon a monster, you get to mill 3 cards. So, you know, milling good, remember that. And then for the rest of the turn, all of your opponent's monsters lose 500 attack because reasons. So yeah, just like another great consistency card. And then when this one happens to go to the graveyard by card effect, you're able to search your deck for any of your tier traps. And then for the final 3-of spell, we're playing 3 Super Polymerization. With the way that the format is currently shaping up, I really enjoy Super Polymerization. I feel like it can go pretty well into most decks. Now, that may change once Doom of Dimensions, I think that's what it's called, or Doom, officially comes out, and decks like K9 get their new support, but this card just plays super well into pretty much like most of the metagame, right? Yummy completely crumbles to it. Dracotail, it's pretty mixed depending on if you play like Secretarion, which we aren't. But even then, like if you're not playing that, you could still super poly their boards away and just be like a general nuisance. And then, like I said, I'm still not familiar with like what the new K9 stuff can do. But point is, super poly just lets you break into so many different decks and so many boards that I feel like it's just, you have to play it currently. That's it for the 3-ofs. And then for the 1-of spells, because we don't play any 2-ofs, we're playing the Pressure Planet wraithsoth to search either our Kashtira Fenrir or the Tearlaments Kashtira, 1 Triple Tactics Talent, and 1 Call by the Grave to deal with potential hand traps, 1 Foolish Burial to send any monster, 1 Foolish Burial Goods to send any spell or trap, and then lastly 1 Tearlaments Grief, which pretty much gives us access to any Tearlament monster because we can special summon any tier monster from our deck or our graveyard, and then all we have to do is send something with the same type of attribute from our side of the field to the grave. So that means you can, in fact, send this monster that you bring out with this and then trigger their graveyard effects, but yeah, this card is just really good. And then its secondary effect, which we actually use fairly often, is when it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, you're able to add back one of your banished Tearlament traps, and those are typically banished by like your Tearlaments Kashtira, right? So being able to add back a resource like that, greatly appreciated. That's it for the spells. And then for the traps, we have our 2 Tearlaments Sulliek to be able to negate monster effects. And then when this one happens to go to the graveyard, which happens pretty frequently, you're able to search your deck for any of your Tearlament monsters as well. We're playing the 1 Tearlaments Metanoise to Book of Moon monsters, as well as be able to add back any Tearlament monster from our graveyard to our hand whenever it's sent to the graveyard by card effect. And then lastly, we have the 1 Trivikarma, which when it's in the graveyard, we can banish it in order to search our deck for every single one of our Tearlament spells and traps because they all happen to mention Visa Starfrost. And with that, that's the main deck. Should be 40 cards like always. Now we can finally move on to the extra deck. Now that we're finally on the extra deck portion of the video, we're going to be starting off with the only synchro monster we're playing, being Naturia Beast. Now, this only requires 1 Earth Tuner plus 1 non-tuner Earth monster, which means that the moment Bulb hits the field, the likelihood of this card coming out is pretty high, honestly. And you may be wondering, how? If the only Earth monsters you play are the Shufflers and you don't really want to summon them. Well, we do play a card called Mudragon of the Swamp, which is pretty integral and is going to be summoned at some point throughout the game, and that card happens to be able to change its attribute to Earth, so all you have to do is hold onto the bulb until you get the Mudragon out, change it to Earth, bring back the bulb, and then synchro for 5 for Naturia Beast. And just like that, you've basically shut off a third of your opponent's deck because it negates all spells. Now you do have to be aware, Naturia Beast, it sends for cost, so whatever you mill off of it will not be able to trigger, whether it's your shaddolls or your Tearlament cards. So, you know, just be aware of that, but being able to just mill 2 to be able to negate a spell entirely is pretty insane, I'm not gonna lie. Now that's it for the synchro monsters, at least for this version. And then for the exceeds, we're playing the 1 number 60 dugares, the Timeless, just another great consistency card. You know, draw 2, discard 1, or potentially reborn. You could also boost, but we're not doing that pretty much ever. We're playing the 1 Time Thief Redoer just to be able to one, take our opponent's resources, because it does that during every standby phase, right? As you're able to take the top card of your opponent's deck and then attach it as a material, and then depending on what it has as a material, it gains an additional effect. So if it's a spell, you get to draw a card. If it's a trap, you get to bounce a face-up card on their side of the field to the top of their deck. And if it's a monster, you just banish it until the end phase. But in addition to that, this is also pretty much the main way that we have to be able to trigger Scheiren whenever we want, as we just overlay both of them into the Time Thief Redoer, and then from there, we're basically good to go. And that's it for that. And then for the other Exceed, we're playing the 1 Pilgrim Reaper, just because it's a rank 6 that allows us to mill 5 cards, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I'll probably say it again in the future. Now, milling 5 is pretty good in a deck like this that we want to mill as many cards as possible. That's it for the Exceeds, and then for the links, we're playing the 1 IP Masquerena, which allows us to go into either the SP Little Knight to banish a card, or the Spright Sprind on the chance that we want to send something like Tearlaments Merrli to the graveyard, and then trigger the Merrli's effective fusion summon into, ideally, probably like a Helshaddoll combined with the field spell to be able to shuffle and pop a card on the field. That's it for the links. And then for the fusions, which we play plenty of, we're playing the Destiny Hero Dangerous, which allows us to basically have a rank 6 play whenever we want, right? All we have to do is shuffle back the malicious with the tier monster, summon this out, and then I just discard a card to send that same malicious, and boom, you have your instant rank 6 play. We have Helshaddoll Winda to go with our Helshaddoll Hollow, as I don't know what to say. This card's broken. Probably should have been banned ages ago, but for whatever reason, Konami refuses to do it. Then we play the 1 Mudragon of the Swamp, the 1 Guru Wings of Resonant Life, and the 1 Predaplant Dragostapelia, all of which are super poly targets, but even if you're not summoning them through super polymerization, you are still able to make them naturally in the deck, which is why, even if you don't play super poly, you should probably still be playing these. Then, because we have Beastking of the Swamp in the deck, that means that we have access to cards such as Grapha, Dragon Overlord of Dark World, which on its own, it's okay, it's like a pseudo-negate. So it doesn't negate in a card, but if your opponent decides to activate a monster effect, a normal spell, or a normal trap, you can change that effect to your opponent discards a card. And by your opponent, I mean you. So this is a pretty solid way of just being able to get rid of bricks that you don't really want in your hand and trigger them, like your Tearlaments Sulliek, for example, your Tearlaments Metanoise, especially if you don't have access to a tier monster, or just get rid of cards that you weren't able to get rid of normally, like your shufflers, right? But having like some kind of negate that we can play and just make pretty naturally is pretty solid. Then we're also playing the 1 Tearlaments Ruculus, which we also will be summoning off of the Beastking of the Swamp as material, and this one just negates special summons. And then lastly, we have the Helshaddoll, who on special, or if you happen to foolish an Aqua monster from your deck to the graveyard, is able to shuffle a card on your opponent's side of the field back into the deck. And if for whatever reason they decide to get rid of this with card effects, if it goes to the graveyard, you can bring it back once per turn and then foolish any tier monster or spell or trap. So with that, that's the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya!